G'day crew, Ross here, and today I'm in the Netherlands, specifically Amsterdam, capital city of the Netherlands, and in 2025, this year, it's turning 750 years old. Today I'm going to show you around some of the parts of the city, a bit of a talk about what you can eat, what you can experience, where to go, and also a few tips and tricks about travelling here. Let's get stuck into it. The Netherlands are located in northwest Europe, and by train they're only 3 hours from Paris, 4 to 6 hours to London, and 7 hours to Berlin. The country is bordered by Belgium and Germany, and it is the flattest country in Europe. Now, most people are going to fly in, and they fly into Schiphol Airport, which is the 4th largest airport in Europe, and there are 650 flights coming in every day. So that airport is connected to pretty much everywhere. We came in on a Saturday afternoon, and it was through customs and out the other side within 25 minutes. Next to the carousel, there is a ticket machine, and for €6.50 you can buy a ticket, that's for an adult, straight into town on the train, which leaves from the terminal. It's between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on what time of the day. And that will get you into Amsterdam Central Station, which borders the north side of the CBD. And that is the south side of the station there, which is facing into the city. The other side of the station, which is here, is out bordered on the north by the IG waterway, which cuts the city in half more or less east to west. There it is there, and there's some pretty large barges that go through there. The other thing at the central station is that is where the ICE trains come in. That is the intercity express trains, 250 kilometres an hour, and they connect you to a lot of the cities in Europe. After your transport's sorted, the next thing is accommodation, and you're spoiled for choice. There are 670 hotels in Amsterdam. That doesn't include hostels, houseboats, tiny houses, serviced apartments, Airbnbs, cabins, camping, farm stays a bit further out. Really depends on what you like to do and what your budget is. We stayed at the Klink Noord, that's a hostel just north of IG Waterway. It only took 8 minutes to get into the train station, and that included a ferry, and from there it's a couple of minutes into the city. We're right next to This Is Holland, which is where a lot of the tour buses, including the hop-on hop-off bus, leave from, so it was a neat little spot. Wherever you stay in the city, be prepared for small rooms. Due to the lack of land in Amsterdam, it's going to be fairly expensive. If you stay in the CBD near the pubs, hotels, clubs, etc., be prepared that it is party central 7 days a week. So if you want to be kept up to the early hours, that's the place to stay if you're a party person yourself. But be prepared that you might want to go a little bit further out. And there's plenty of transport options. So don't think that 3 or 4 kilometres in the CBD is a problem, because there's lots of tourist attractions everywhere. So they're sprinkled all over the place. Here's just the map from the train, and it just shows you how widespread the public transport system is. So lots of options, and that doesn't include taxis and trams, hiring pushbikes, etc. Now this little room here, 4 cupboards on the left. I know it's messy because there wasn't much room for suitcases. Double bunk, bed at the end, bathroom on the right, and toilet behind. Probably 20 to 25 square metres. That was nearly 400 a night in the shoulder season, so it just gives you an idea of what you'll be up for. Before we talk tourist attractions, let's talk history. Between 1270 and 1275, fishermen built a dam across the Amstel River to prevent flooding, and the little fishing village was called Amsterdam. Of course, it had access to the sea, which meant trade. Trade brought wealth, wealth created prosperity. So the little village became a town, and the town became a city. And the name Amsterdam eventually got shortened to Amsterdam. There's now a new dam much closer to the sea, so the Amstel River Dam is no longer in use. In fact, it's been filled in and built over top of. There is a square where there once was a dam. The Amstel River still does run through the city. Now the dam itself you can't see because it's now square, and there it is, there's a monument right in the middle of it. It's about 700 metres south of the central train station, southwest, about 10-minute walk. Along one side there is a royal palace. There's also the 15th century Gothic new church you can visit, and Madame Tussauds waxworks. Amsterdam is known as the Venice of the North, and it's easy to see why. There's canals everywhere, and it is beautiful. There's approximately 900 islands connected by 1,200 bridges, about 3 times as many as Venice, and there's twice the length of canals. And the entire Amsterdam Canal belt is protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The other thing the two cities have in common is that they are both built on wooden pylons driven into the marshland, which stabilises it and then built on top. As you can see, a representation there. And underneath Amsterdam, there are 11 million wooden pylons, and they still build that way. with a combination of wood or concrete depending on where it is. You're going to see lots of canals and bridges just walking around, but a great way to see the city is from the water, and there's lots and lots of options. We took a tour on a 25-person open boat, and there are both open and closed boats. There's some closed boats that have covers over top, great in the rainy weather, but as you see on this particular day it was beautiful and sunny, so the open boat was a great option. The captain of that boat told us that there are 500 boat licenses in the city and there's a waiting list, so there's lots and lots of boats and lots of options. The tours usually take about an hour, although you can book some longer ones, and you can just get online. There's lots of sites where you can book a tour, usually in your own currency. The smaller boats can get into some of the smaller canals, such as the Seven Bridges Canal, and you'll see that here, and that's the only place where you've got 7 bridges in a row. There's lots of boats just south of the railway station in the big dock area, but they're actually all over the city, so you won't have any problem. There are also specialty tours, including night tours, theme tours, even cannabis tours like that one, and they start from as little as €14.50. A great activity. Now, being so flat, Amsterdam is great for push bikes, and they are the dominant form of transport. There's 1.3 push bikes for every person in the city. They are everywhere. And they have right of way, so when they're going, get out of their way. They will stop for pedestrian crossings, otherwise they just don't stop. And they come in all shapes and sizes, tandems, singles, electrics, and these very popular ones with the pods on the front, which you see being used to deliver goods and people. A lot of these are step-through bikes because you're stopping and starting, so they're a lot more practical than the race bikes we see here in Australia. Amsterdam has 800 kilometres of tracks, and the Netherlands has 37,000 kilometres of tracks. And yes, they do get fished out of the canal at a rate of 12 to 15,000 bikes per year. At the ferries, there are bike parks, more or less Amsterdam's version of a park and ride. You will find bike parks everywhere, and you can hire bikes from any of the hotels or accommodation places. So if you've got a couple of hours and the weather's behaving itself, it's a great way to get around. You're also going to find these little cars, these miniature cars. Sometimes they have motorcycle engines, sometimes they're electric, and they're parked all over the place. And look at that, that's a tiny one, about the quarter the size of a smart car. And they use sometimes you find them where the pedestrians are walking. They usually use bike tracks. They'll sometimes be where the cars are, and they're the only vehicle that can get onto the ferry. There you go, there's one hopping on the ferry now. A very popular option. In the Netherlands, everyone drives, rides, and usually walks on the right. So if you're from a country like Australia, New Zealand, or Britain, that just means look both ways before you cross the road, because these things zoom around, and I nearly got run over about 3 times, my own fault each time. Besides walking and riding, other options include taking a taxi, although they are notoriously expensive in the Netherlands. You can also take a bus, tram, or train, and of course we have ferries crossing the IG waterway. These are free. They run 24/7, and it takes 2 minutes and 20 seconds from the ramp up on one side to the ramp down on the other. So a very quick way of getting around, and there's usually 2 of them running during peak hour. So a bit of a fun experience. You could easily spend a week looking at all the tourist attractions around Amsterdam. And that includes all the restaurants and the fantastic range of museums and all just the interesting things to see and do and the tours to go on. One of the things that I like to do is actually get out in the burbs, in the suburbs. These are taken from about half an hour south of the city, and these houses are about half an hour north of IG Waterway. And you'll see that people live mostly in high-rise due to the lack of land. And all of these buildings are very, very different in style and design, and I found it quite interesting. One of the things you will find is because people are living in these high-density areas, is there are lots of open spaces ranging from plazas to parks and gardens, and they're absolutely everywhere. So take a walk, especially if the weather's sunny. Due to the lack of space, another option are houseboats, and there are 2,500 houseboats moored in and around Amsterdam, in the canals and the CBD out in the suburbs, pretty much in every direction. And they range from converted boats and barges through to these full-size houses on concrete caissons. These particular ones are just out to the north. That's the city, IG Waterway. Just to the north of that, there's a bit of an area there, and each area in red has some of these houseboats moored. Some of the times they are on either side of the river, just in single file. These particular ones are about 3 deep, and they're permanently moored, and they're more or less their own suburb. And some of these even have their own pontoon gardens, like that one. Needs a weed, but hey, it's the start of spring. I was told they're around about $1 million each, and it's one of the options that people have to get into the housing market. Back in the city, you'll see lots of very old, beautiful buildings, many dating back to the 17th century. As I mentioned, the whole area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so a lot of effort goes into maintaining these historic streetscapes. They don't like visual clutter or oversized signage. And what that looks like in real terms is this. There's a McDonald's and there's a KFC, but they don't have the big garish signs we would normally see if you're walking around any other city. So the cities are very, very pretty. Another thing to be aware of is it'll cost you money to go to the toilet. In most places, about €1. Even McDonald's will charge you. That's 70 euro cents. That's about $1.40 to go to the loo. Be prepared and plan ahead. You're going to find lots of these skinny buildings. A few hundred years ago, they used to tax buildings based on their width. And you'll see some of those are actually falling over very slowly, and that grey one's falling out. That is due to subsidence. It's a very, very slow process, but it does happen. Now, the Dutch are a practical lot. You'll find things like bike ramps on bridges all over the city. They also have a different view on risk management. This is a playground in a school. There's dead trees and things for kids to climb over and fall off of and learn not to. There's cobblestones everywhere, often uneven. And of course, there are canals. And there are cars parked next to canals, there are bikes parked next to canals, and there are people walking next to canals. And if you get wet, it means you walked on the wrong bit. Let's talk food. The Netherlands represents nearly 200 different nationalities and cultural backgrounds, and that means lots of food options. Unlike accommodation, which has a 12.5% tourist tax, food does not. So eating out isn't too bad. We budgeted €50 per meal for the three of us, allow a bit extra for morning and afternoon tea. Now there's cafes and restaurants all over the city, and most of them display the menu out the front, so you can see what's available. In April, which is shoulder season, we had no issues, but in summer you might want to think about booking ahead. And the hours are what you generally expect. Restaurants from sort of mid-morning onwards, cafes can be open early, late, and some of them are 24/7. One of the things you'll notice about the Dutch is they love their bakeries and their cheese, and you'll find bakeries at pretty much every city block, in the CBD and out in the burbs, and cheese shops everywhere. So get in there and have a look, because there are some beautiful, beautiful things to buy and eat. One of the local delicacies I tried was this. It looked like something out of Caddyshack. I picked this up in the supermarket for a couple of euro, and it was actually chocolate bread. Never tried it before. Absolutely delicious. The other thing you've sort of got to try is stroopwafel. They're large waffles, sometimes flavoured, say caramel or coffee, and they're often coated with sprinkles, Nutella or chocolate. They can be eaten as is, but locals sometimes sit them on top of a hot coffee or chocolate for a minute until the heat from the steam softens them. They're nice, they're about €7.5. A bit expensive, but then how often are you going to Amsterdam? Another thing that Amsterdam is famous for is its museums, and there's lots of them. I recommend going through and doing your research before you go, because you can hit a bunch of these in a day, and I'll leave a list in the description. Let's go through a few of them now. We'll start with the Rijksmuseum, which is the Netherlands National Museum, showcasing Dutch art and history from the Middle Ages. And being in Amsterdam, of course, you can ride a pushbike through it. Close by, we have the Van Gogh Museum, which is dedicated to the life of Vincent van Gogh. Strongly recommend buying a ticket in advance. It's very popular with long queues, as is Anne Frank House, which apparently is quite a harrowing experience. That is the house she and her parents hid in during World War II. Buy a ticket in advance. Close to that is Madame Tussauds Waxworks on Dam Square, which I mentioned earlier. And over from that, we have the Hash, Marijuana and Hemp Museum, which looks at the history, culture and use of cannabis and hemp, including its role in medicine, agriculture and art. Then in the Red Light District, we have Red Light Secrets, the Museum of Prostitution, which is the world's first and only museum dedicated to the world's oldest profession. We have Body Worlds, the Happiness Project, which apparently is really cool. I didn't get to go there, but that has over 200 real plastinated human specimens, and the exhibits explore how happiness affects our health. Close to that, we have the Torture Museum, and that's pretty much the opposite of the other one. So that has over 40 instruments of punishment from across Europe and other displays. We've got the Museum of the Canals, which is an interactive engineering museum located in a canal house. Looks at the history and development of the canal ring. Then we have the Art Zoo Museum, because nothing says I love animals more than by killing them, stuffing them and sticking them on a shelf. Good job. We have the Sex Museum down near the train station, which is dedicated to human sexuality. We've got Rembrandt House, which is the restored home where he lived, showing his etchings and personal belongings. We have the Heart Museum, which brings world-class exhibitions, and they work with places like the British Museum, Centre Pompidou and the Smithsonian. Then we have Foam, which is a photographic museum, one of several. There's also a microorganism museum, there's a naval museum, there's an architecture museum, so there's a bunch of others. As I said, I'll leave a link. There's about 26 that I found, there's probably a few more. Well worth spending some time. About 20 minutes south of the railway station are some flower markets along the Singel River. There's a few hundred metres there and there's a bunch of markets. The Torture Museum I mentioned is just to the north, on the north bank, and there's a cat museum called the Cat and Cabinet on the south. Only in Amsterdam would you find a museum dedicated to pussies. Anyway, that's the market along the river there, and this isn't a fresh flower market, it's actually one for bulbs, and there's a whole bunch of shops. And they sell bulbs, gladioli, iris, and of course the ubiquitous tulips, which are everywhere. And they come in all shapes and sizes and colours. Bulb Exporters was just one of the websites. I think there was a couple there. They do export all over the world, so you don't have to carry these around with you, although you can get them in cans and in egg cartons, etc. However, they're only certified to send at certain times. For Australia and New Zealand, they can only send in September and October, so just be aware of that. You can't just grab things and take them with you. There's also a bunch of tourist things, so if you want to look at some souvenir shopping, buying things for other people perhaps, you can, and that's tulips by the way in those clogs, you can buy clogs and clothes and postcards and everything else. There's also some restaurants and cafes in this area, and there's a shop dedicated just to Christmas. I only took a couple of photos, here they are. So you can easily have a snack, wander around and spend a good half an hour to an hour in that area. It was a neat little find. Now heading south from the flower markets, we get down to the Rijksmuseum, and I found this lamppost having a sleep, obviously been a hard day's night. That is the Rijksmuseum I mentioned earlier, a beautiful old building, and of course there is a walkway / bike path straight through the middle of it. Found a tree also having a sleep, obviously being its long winter. Now I got down to Vondelpark, which is one of the very many green open spaces that you find around Amsterdam. Absolutely gorgeous. This is down to the southwest of the CBD. There are bike paths, walking paths, there are people doing Tai Chi, there's people walking their dogs, there are playgrounds, there are lots of water traps, and this is really got the CBD to the north and suburbs on the other side. That hotel there was one we were looking at staying in. There are a lot of accommodation options in this area, and you're really only 30 to 40 minutes from most places, and that's assuming you're walking. If you're doing anything else like taking a tram or bus, this is actually a pretty nice spot. Lots of water, only halfway up that duck, so not too deep. And as I said, a great little spot to visit. I probably spent about 40 minutes just walking through that park. It was just a beautiful, beautiful day. So a nice little place to have a look around. No video about Amsterdam would be complete if I didn't talk about the red light districts and the drug culture. Now the largest of the 3 red light districts is called De Wallen, and it's about 10 minutes south of the train station. This is also party central, so if you're going to stay here because you want to be close to the action, just remember it's 7 nights a week, and you'll be up until the early hours of the morning with the noise, so be prepared for that. This is also where the drug culture is, and of course you can have the cafes there where people go in and they smoke different flavours of marijuana, and that's a pretty popular activity. I didn't take any photos out of respect for those people, and there's no photos to be taken of the ladies. The ones you do see coming up I've grabbed online, and they're all blurred out, so there's absolutely no photos. But you can get cannabis ice cream, cannabis chocolate, cannabis chupa chups or pops. You can get space cakes. There's all sorts of drug paraphernalia. There are mushroom shops, etc. As for the red light district, there are 300 windows in De Wallen alone, and that doesn't include what's in the other 2 districts. The ladies hire these for a shift. I think a sign coming up shows a 9-hour shift for 125 euros. So they hire them and they stand in the front of these, stand or sit in them, and they're red lit for the female workers or blue lit for transgender workers. If you like the lady, you tap on the window. If she likes you, she opens the door, you have a talk. If you agree on arrangements, you go in the back, the curtain gets closed, and then she does a foot rub and recites poetry. I think that's what happens, isn't it? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, that's how it happens. But the lady can also tap for you, which I found out on day 2. I was out for a coffee, tap, tap, tap. I looked around, there's a lady there. I said, no thanks, but I felt pretty good about myself. And then there was another tap, 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 and she tapped for the short, fat, bald guy walking the other direction. And that's when I realised she's just trying to make the rent. And fair enough. So that is just something that you can do. As I said, they're very, very open about what they do, but for their own privacy and safety, no photos to be taken. There's also a lot of adult shops in that area, or sex shops, call them whatever you want. And again, they're very open and you can wander into those. There's the sex museum in there, and there's also the Museum of Prostitution we mentioned earlier. So it's worth having a look through that area. I wandered through probably about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and there were lots of bucks parties and hens nights. It's a really noisy happening place. There's lots of police. You won't feel unsafe. It's just raucous, not unsafe. The people get drunk. The occasional one falls in the canal, and that's just the way it goes. Now, one of the byproducts of all that partying is that next morning there are piles and piles of rubbish. And you see this all over that particular part of the city. And I know the locals haven't been too happy about it, but one thing that the city does is a really, really good job of cleaning it all up. And they make use of that water and give it all a big clean. So just something to be aware of. That's not a big issue. And that is Amsterdam in a nutshell. Very interesting place to come. It's pretty, it's very tourist orientated, the locals are friendly, it's easy to get around, you can walk everywhere or hire a bike and see it like the locals do. Highly recommend coming to the Netherlands. Pick your time, it does rain for 192 days of the year, so be prepared for that. Always take your wet weather gear. That's it for now. As always guys, thanks for your time, and until next time, happy travels. See ya.